So, my good friend, Tanya Obeng, how are you this morning?
You know what? As I just said to you, Gary, I've been working till 4 a.m. this morning writing, and I thought, oh, I've got a 10 o'clock appointment with Gary. Oh, about which is brilliant, by the way. And I'm not, and as Gary would tell you, it's not normally me. I'm not normally running a little bit late, but this morning I'm just being totally real. We just had that kind of a morning because I feel like during this whole lockdown period, everything is changing, and I'm starting to feel like I'm putting myself into a little bit of a reset button. There's a bit of a reset that's going on
Hmm.
now because there's another change now. So in the UK right now, some shops are opening up. And when you come to the end of something that feels, in some ways, the pandemic feels quite traumatic in some ways, and you feel you've come to the end of it, I feel like it's now that I'm being reborn. And it's spring. Spring has that, it's harvest. Spring has that time of rebirth and the sun's coming out earlier. So you kind of feel this energy because I am honestly, I sometimes suffer really badly from sad. So as soon as the weather changes, I feel like I've got my wings back. So
Hmm.
it's a interesting time. It's a reflective time, but I feel it's also time for newness. I love that, the newness to come to light and blossom. So yes, this is prime time.
I love that. And thank you so much again for owning it's been a really busy morning. Like, that's real life. Yeah, Tanya?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. I'm fed up of showing up and saying, "Hey, this is Tanya Obeng," and I actually, you got to work hard sometimes. You know what I mean? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I love that so much. And I really love
Mm,
immediately how you've spoken. And again, this is, of course, activating consciousness. And for me,
mm,
I've become more conscious in the last 12 months in particular of those
mm.
natural cycles. Like we talk, we throw it away so easy, don't we? Like the seasons, you have like winter, spring, summer. But they're very real transitional points in our lives if we allow ourselves to experience them. Like say,
Mm.
there is new budding, there is new opportunity, there is a new energy right now
Yes, yes.
of potential. And I'm
Mm.
wondering for you, since we spoke 18 months ago on the Value Through Vulnerability podcast, I'd love to hear a little bit of an update as to what's maybe some of the changes that you've experienced, or what have you even become more conscious of over the last 18 months since we last had that conversation? I'm wondering what shifted for you, or maybe what you've learned about yourself.
You know what? First of all, I love that earth energy that you have there. That's very earth. 18 being very specific. 18 months ago since we last spoke. I love it. so so that's very specific, and it's very true because that's actually, it's interesting when you say that because that feels like a long time ago. It feels like more than, energetically for me, it feels like more than 18 months in terms of my growth. And I feel in terms of even me just watching you, Gary, if you don't mind, I can't talk about your growth, but even me watching you and seeing how our friendship has developed over this time as well.
Hmm.
So it seems like, because I just met you, didn't I, 18 months ago, and we met in the British Library afterwards and had a really good conversation, and we instantly connected. And what's really interesting in those 18 months is a lot has changed. Lockdown, podcast. We've both got our podcast going. At the time, I just had a YouTube channel. I didn't have a podcast. My podcast has been really good in terms of the people that I have met and the real stories that I have done. And even the way that I interview, I feel has changed over the time. So I feel like I've grown as a person. I always speak about truth, and I feel truth is a journey. I feel like I I have been a bit of a people pleaser. I've always liked to make people feel comfortable around me, and it's partly the way I've been brought up. And I had a year of yes about 2 years ago when I read Shonda Rhimes and said, I'm going to say yes to all the opportunities. And this year, I think I went into this year and I said, I'm going to have a year of no shit. That's what I said. So I went from the year of yes to no shit, because the year of yes was, it's great to accept everything, but sometimes you can also have people that can take advantage of you as well. And when you are a people pleaser, that happens more often than not. So it's important that we have our boundaries. And I wouldn't say I've learned, but I'm learning to say no. I'm learning to step into my energy and say, okay, I'm not going to accept this. And I don't like this behavior. And sometimes it's really hard to have a confrontation with someone, but actually it's important to, I don't have to be mean about it, but when you say, you know what, I accept this or I don't accept this. I'm not doing swaps, because I was some person that done, sometimes I might do a swap spiritually. I'm not doing swaps anymore. I'm like, okay, if you're going to do my work and you're going to come and work with me, then it's a paid program, and you have to accept that that's a paid program. So those are all the things that I've got to do, you know. So all of these things are important that I move forward and work with. Yeah. Sorry, can I just pause a bit? Because I've just pause a bit, Gary, for just a second in that. I know you said doing a straight take, but just because I just hear the children coming in, I just want to just want to let them know I'm doing a podcast. Can I do
Don't you
that?
worry, of
Yeah,
course.
just pause a bit, because
Please do.
that's not a bad thing to take out. Just give us a second, let them know that I'm doing a podcast. In sex. Okay. Hello guys, just let you know I'm actually doing a podcast.
So I'm going to do a little test. Never done this before on this podcast. And with Tanya's support, we're just going to leave this bit in. Because guess what, listeners? This is real life. This is what the pandemic has taught us. It's okay for the delivery driver to ring a doorbell and us not deliver perfection. Perfection is part of the reason we have the challenges I feel that we have today, is that we bring everything so polished, so armored up, so perfect that it doesn't allow space for mistakes. It doesn't allow space for learning. So it's going to be interesting. We'll see if this part stays in the conversation or not. I really hope that it does, because I think it's just so important, and the area of experimentation as well is also critical. So Tanya, I've just been chatting with our kind listeners. I've just been chatting with our kind listeners and just saying some of my reflections actually were around the fact that today, 12 months on from the start of the pandemic, this stuff happens. The kids come in, the dog barks, we take a delivery from a delivery driver, and life carries on. It's all okay.
I'm so sorry, because we're live, aren't we? Are we live, Gary?
No, we're not live.
Oh.
No, we're actually
Okay.
we're actually recording. But I think that the thing for me, and I hope that with your acceptance we can leave it in. I think it's just a really good representation of where we are in terms of how it's okay to take disruption. It's okay to not live with a perfectionist mindset, because guess what? Life isn't perfect.
Yeah, I understand that, and you're right. And sometimes we have to go through what we need to go through with everything that we need to go through, and we have to work through that. So yeah, that's very important. So thank you for bringing that up, Gary. You know, oh my goodness me. I'm sorry. Yeah.
It's so good. No, it's and there's all these lessons all of the time, and I think what I love about your growth and what I've observed in you over the last 18 months is such a great example of the outside world, our truth as individuals changes the more we settle in and feel okay being ourselves from the inside out.
Yeah.
Does that resonate at all, or would you build or challenge on that?
Yes, no, totally. Thank you for that question. You know, because I feel like when you are truly yourself, then you can really connect on that level. And you know what, we're not perfect beings. I love that, the fact we are imperfect beings, and it's about addressing that imperfection. Sometimes things happen, life happens. Sometimes you have to go through transitions in life, and you have to address all of those imperfections. And unless we address them, then we can't have those conversations with our colleagues, with our work colleagues. We can't have those conversations with the people around us. So these are things that we really do need to address, you know? So yeah. So that's so real. The dog barks. And when I do my podcast now, I call it utilization, because sometimes my phone will go off, and I don't know how to switch it off sometimes. So not the mobile phone, the other, like the landline. Sometimes something happens, but yeah, these is all things when you're doing these podcasts, we don't, or especially now during this pandemic, we don't have that space, because everybody's in the house, you know, because everybody's working from home. So there are all those transitions, which is very, very stressful when we're all being thrown into a space where everybody's having to, I feel, work in survival mode. And that's why I use that term, because survival mode is really, really, really tough, because we're not living, you know. And when you, from a therapeutic perspective, when you're in survival mode, you're not truly living. And if we're honest with us, I don't think anyone that has had to go through what we've had to go through during these last 12 months has been able to be fully present and fully living. And that's okay, because we've gone through it as a collective. But now, as we come into this new kind of harvest spring moment, we are now living. Yeah. We are now taking things a little bit further, or we should allow ourselves to. So the only way that we can truly connect is sometimes spiritual, is sometimes escapism, is meditation, is being able to journey through things in a meditative way. So there are all these things that we need to start to explore. If we can meet up with a friend, it's good that we talk. It's good that we're having these interactions on Zoom, because a lot of people have been very lonely as well. There's a lot of people that are living. I mean, I have friends that are living alone, and when you live alone and you can't even go to the gym. So, for example, the last day that I went to the gym towards the end of the lockdown, I was doing a body tone class, and some people were actually in tears at the end of the class because that was the last class. And I'd never seen that before, because they don't have those interactions. If they live alone, they don't have those interactions. In the gym, it kind of releases some of those endorphins, doesn't it? And it gives you that whole feel good thing. And it's okay going for a run outside, but when you go to the gym, you interact with people as well. So it's not just about the fitness. So there's all these little things that people are having to miss, and there's a lot of things that people have had to go through. So there's been a lot of real deep depression, and I feel like it's been ignored because some people are just showing up on Zoom, showing up on social media, and actually they're suffering in silence, you know, and that's if they haven't found their outlook, because some people are fine with it. Some people they live alone and they're doing their artwork or they're doing this, but I just want to address that some people are really having to struggle through this pandemic from an emotional period. And I feel in the Western world, we don't say, hey, you know what, can I have a chat? Hey, can we do this? We sometimes always have this fakeness and this facade of showing up without addressing some of the problems. And that's kind of why I'm setting up Communication Hub as well. I just want to throw that in there, a little bit of a plug there, Gary, to talk about all the problems rather than all the successes. And that's what that's about. And it might sound a bit down, but it's not a bit down. It's actually things that we avoid are the things that sometimes help us to actually reach our goals in a positive way.
I love this. I want to explore this definitely, Tanya, and I'm glad you brought
Mm,
up your new communication hub, because I think there's a few things you've spoken about that are really relevant for this conversation around, how do we
mm,
become more conscious individually
mm,
and collectively? And I
mm.
want to join a couple of dots, if I may, as you tell us about the communication hub, which is friction is necessary.
Wow.
Healthy friction is necessary. That is
Yeah.
actually what diversity is. That's what
Mm,
nature thrives on. If
mm,
we have sameness, if we have agreement all of the time, 24/7, nothing changes. We become
mm,
myopic and we end up with what we've
mm.
got today.
Yeah.
So actually, I love the idea, and I think I'm at a very similar space in my own journey as you around this. Healthy discourse is probably the way
Mm,
I'd put it, is like, how do we get away from, and maybe you can tell us how the communication hub's going to assist with this. How do we create or co-create the brave spaces that allow us to challenge one another in a healthy way, or even just ask the question, Tanya, I just don't get what you said. I
yeah.
don't want to
Yeah.
offend you, but genuinely, I don't understand what you said. You
Mm,
spoke about diversity, or you spoke about self-improvement, or you spoke about spirituality. I just don't understand it, Tanya. How do I ask that question to you without offending you? Like,
mm.
do you know what I mean? So it's like, how do,
Yeah.
how, do- how,
Yeah.
how do we create those brave spaces where,
Mm.
like, just because I'm, for example, a Caucasian male and you're a black woman, suddenly I'm now overthinking, like, if I say it, is it going to be taken the wrong way? Do you know, there's so much overthinking in this world these days, instead of just going, hey, you're a human, I'm a human, I've got a question. Like, how do I go about asking that question, Tanya?
You know what? That's such a good point, because it's number one. I always say to young people, and I think as adults we should take this on. Don't be afraid to put up your hand and ask a question, because when you ask questions, that's how you learn, that's how you develop. And what happens in adulthood is we think we have to know it all. What happens when we're a leader, for example, people who are leaders and CEOs? Sometimes if you have that arrogance of I have to know it all, you're not going to develop as a leader. And sometimes it's important to ask those questions about things that you don't understand. And as human beings, we don't understand everything. We don't understand everybody's situation. I remember speaking to a guy the other day, as a black guy, and he admitted to me that he didn't know who Maya Angelou was. And in my mind, I thought, how the hell? But then I had to pull back, and he said, well, Tanya, do you know who the president of St. Lucia was? And I said, actually, I don't know. So then there's something what he was saying to me, okay, I may not know this, but you don't know this. There's always something that we don't know about each other, so we shouldn't beat each other up about stuff. And then to go deeper in terms of what you just said, Gary, sometimes with regards to what's happened with the Black Lives Matter, sometimes as a white man, you don't know the struggles, and it's important to ask the questions so you can understand the struggles. But then in turn, there'll be struggles that I don't know about as well, because just because I'm a black woman, you can't presume I've also had those struggles too. I mean, I've had struggles, but when someone said to me, actually within the workplace, have you struggled with kind of senior leadership? And I haven't, actually. I can always say I haven't. There's other things that I have had that are struggles, but there's also right now, because of certain things, there's been lots of assumptions. I sometimes have the assumption that I grew up on an estate, and I didn't. No, I didn't. I was, I was born in a. It's all these kind of little things, because they think, okay, you're poor. If you're a black person, maybe you've come from a poor background. Absolutely rubbish. There's so much naivety there, and there's so much assumptions as to what world you've come from and where you are and who you are just by the way you look. Because I've got dreadlocks, I must be ital. Ital means kind of like a vegan. No, I'm not a vegan, actually. I do like fish, and I do but it's all these, there's people look at people and they automatically make judgments. And rather than make judgment, let's change judgment into questions. If you kind of see everything as a blank space, you come into space, you see, I want you to see, me as a black woman with dreadlocks, but you acknowledge you don't know anything about me. And you ask me the questions, just like I see you as a white man with a bald head, let's say. And I don't know, I could make assumptions about that of you being a white man with a bald head. I could go there, but it's like, that's judgment. So actually give myself that time to ask those questions about you and learn about you. And actually, sometimes when people meet, there's always serendipity. I do believe that. And I feel it's really exciting to discover what that is. What is that plan that the universe has, or that source has, or that God has? Because when you meet someone, I feel there's always a plan, and sometimes we don't always know what that plan is. But just rather than force the relationship in terms of from a sales perspective, or because we've met on LinkedIn doesn't mean that you're going to sell me something. Let's get to know each other slowly. Let's have those interactions and see what we have in common. And as we dig deep, we might find we've got so much in common that the universe has brought us together for a reason. And then eventually we find out what that reason is. And it may not be a transactional sale. So those are important things to kind of dig deep about, I feel. And I feel that we've been able to do that as well, Gary, because I think I haven't brought anything off you in the last 18 months.
Yeah. And I've not sold anything, so it's easy. I love what you share.
We've met on LinkedIn, haven't we? We've both met, and we haven't, and but yet we've built a connection, and we've actually, I feel what the connections have been great in terms of I've shared connections with you, you've shared connections with me, and I feel like I've built stuff has happened to me in terms of building relationships and with my business on an organic space rather than forcing it. So that just proves we don't have to always focus on the sell, because we've met on that kind of, in that arena, so to speak.
It's so brilliant. There's like a million things, Tanya, you're bringing up for me. So first of all, like one of my like brothers from another mother is Adrian, who you connected me to.
Oh, yeah? I love that. Brothers from another mother. I love
seriously,
that. Seriously,
I absolutely adore that human being, Adrian Betton, that I would never have had the pleasure to meet until you connected us. But the other thing I want to mention, which I think is so powerful, what you just said, connecting deeply. That is how we get conscious. Like, how can we understand ourselves or the world better if we're not prepared to go below surface level? And that's what I see all around the workplace. And back to your point about mental health, loneliness, how are we going to know if Gary's got caring responsibilities at home, as well as doing a full-time job, as well as living on his own, for example? if we don't ask and we don't go below the surface. And I think that is one of the biggest opportunities, but one of the biggest misses of our time right now during this pandemic. Massive opportunity to try and get to know everyone really meaningfully. Some have, but I think a lot haven't. But I don't know what your thoughts may. That sounds a bit judgmental now, but it's a general sort of. There's a feeling I get. I don't want to be judgmental. There's a feeling I get. I don't know what your thoughts are.
You're right at saying that. I mean, with regards to judgment, I just meant from a negative space, because we're a human being, so we are going to automatically judge. So let's be real with that. It's more about being conscious of that. I think what you're talking about is adaptability, because when you're aware of certain behaviors within people, and you're aware of circumstance, because a lot of people don't talk about their circumstance, which is understandable. If it is a horrific circumstance, it will be something that will be shared probably in a slow way, or get in terms of digging deep and getting to know that person. But it's about being adaptable. Being a woman, for example, being a woman with children in the workplace, sometimes I've found it's really, I don't always want to bring my children up. I don't want to make excuses. I don't want to, in the past, it's like, okay, I don't want to say it's because of my kids, because that's what's expected of me, and I'll get that look or whatever, but actually, the truth be told, when you do have responsibilities, you have to build your life around them. And to me, my children don't come second, they come first. So, and sometimes there are mistakes, sometimes there are things that we have to address. So if we're aware of a situation within the workplace, I think it's about being adaptable to that. And I feel the world is changing, because this has come up a lot during the pandemic, because people are, as a friend of mine, some people are maybe in court, or like as a lawyer, they're doing all of that online, where they've got the kids downstairs, or they've got someone, imagine all of that. So imagine the pressures of your job, but you've still got the kids that want feeding at a certain time, or they want doing. So as a mother, you're wearing all these different caps. And I can only mention from a mother's perspective, but I'm sure also from a father's perspective, or from other perspectives, there's issues as well. But I can only talk from my perspective. So it's all about being adaptable, or learning how can we include, when we talk about diversity, inclusiveness, how can we include circumstance within the work? Because we can all do stuff. As I said this morning, I think I'm very good. I think I like to hit deadlines, and I do hit deadlines. I worked till 4 a.m. this morning, to hit my deadline. I'm perfectly capable of working and doing a very good job. But sometimes it may be that I'm not able to work in the time frame of 9 to 5. And I feel this needs to be addressed, because as human beings, sometimes there is this ageism, and within the workplace, when you're over 40, there's, oh my God, that person, she's going to talk about all responsibilities, especially being a woman over 40. I think it's very different from a man. You always see like George Clooney, aren't you? As you get older, it's almost, it's fine. But as you get older as a man, there's sometimes, what I see is there's more respect. That's what I've experienced. It's almost like sometimes I've been in situations and I feel like there's this respect for this older man, and in my head I think he's talking shit, but people are respecting that person because they're seeing an older man. But with a woman, sometimes there's oh my God, she's going to have a moan, or she's going to talk about her kids, or she's going to talk about this, and then she doesn't know herself. And then there's a lot of ageism, and there's a lot of behavior where you kind of look down upon. And actually, when you get older, I do feel we've lost that sense of wisdom, because as you're getting older, there is wisdom. There's wisdom in the old and the young. And I think it's about experiencing that wisdom and learning from each other, and losing this ageism and losing these labels. I hate these labels, millennials, Gen Zers, because it just puts people in brackets. And actually, there can be somebody that's tech savvy and in their 50s, and they could be more tech savvy in their 50s than the person that's 25, just because they've worked in that industry and they know their stuff. So it's just about communication, and actually accessing those points and saying, okay, answer those questions, and finding out what that person knows and what that person doesn't know in terms of doing their job. And I think if we lose that, it's like we're losing that patriotism. And I think that's more of a problem than even race, to be honest with you. I think that's more of a problem in terms of ageism, in terms of all these. I think that's more of a problem. God, that's a bit of a statement I've just made there. But just because I see it every day, that's something that really gets me more than anything is ageism. God, how have I gone from? I've just gone from one extreme to
it's brilliant, but this is the human experience. We're in the moment, and that's what I love us role modeling in this conversation, Tanya. Is what we're sharing, yeah, that might change next week. It might change in a year. It might still be with
Yeah.
us. We don't know, but it's your truth is right now. That's your
Mm.
truth. For me, it's my truth right now,
Yeah.
but it can shift.
Mm.
And I think this is part of the thing. And I want to come back to your communication hub because I'm really interested to hear more about it, what you're actually doing with it,
Mm.
because that labeling bit is such a critical part of this whole shift that we're experiencing, I think, Tanya, which is, and I know it can sound really blasé, but I do believe it in my heart and my soul. When we
Mm.
see each other as a human being first, everything is so much easier.
Mm.
Like, and everyone labels up, yeah, it's neuroscience, I can never say it, the amygdala, and then you've got this part of your brain. Yeah, I get all the brain science, but don't let any of that detract and go, oh yeah, it's quicker if you have a label, you can then shortcut, like it's how we're wired. Like, get rid of all that BS and just go, right, I'm here with Tanya for this 35, 40 minutes. You're a human being. Let's have a chat. Like, who are you? What you're doing? Like, what are we working on? What are the barriers that are getting in our way? Like, I genuinely don't get it.
Yeah.
I don't know how we're just losing ourselves and buying into all of this BS instead of just coming in and going, hey, right, Tanya. Like, I'm a really simple human being, Tanya, but like the more I see what's been happening in the last 12 months as well, and it's important, like I'm not belittling it, like I've gone a hell of a journey, as you know, through all this as well. But what I'm sitting in now, right now in this moment with you is, if we can literally just go, right, I'm present with you. We've allocated 30 minutes, Tanya. Right, where do we want to go with this? How do we want to use it? What's our best use of this time together? What's on your heart? What's on my mind? Like, if we come from that space every time, I think the whole world shifts.
Yeah, most definitely.
And I want to add to that in terms of, I'm a great, as you probably just spoke, a great lover of Maya Angelou, because I identify with her experience. And my mum read her books, and I'm the youngest child. And my mum was a very different mother to me than she was to my older siblings, because when she read Maya Angelou, she said she found it healing because of her experience. And I just feel like for what we're doing today is we're sharing our experience and we're sharing where we are. And when we talk and we share these experiences, whether it's through a podcast or whether it's through a conversation, what happens is we raise awareness and we're letting everybody know that actually this is what I'm going through right now. And by saying that, we are allowing other people to be authentic and be okay with what is going on right now, type of thing. And I think that's where you're kind of coming from, really. And it's like, by having this conversation right now, I'm saying, you know, what we've both said, that confrontation is actually important. It's funny, I went to a group the other day, it was a spiritual group, and they asked, if you were born, this is what they asked, if you were born again and you were your own mother, what would you say? And everybody was saying things that were perfect. And I had to speak my truth, because I thought, this is like we're in a world of imagination. If we actually look back on our growth, everything dark in our life has probably been something that's helped us to grow. Not in everybody's circumstance. Some people, it may be mental health, it might have gone in a different direction. So I know there are some negative circumstances that have gone well. But for me, myself, when I look at some of the darkness in my world, in terms of some of the bumps, when I say darkness, I mean some of the bumps that I've had to experience, some of the hardships I've had to experience, those are really prominent in my world because they have made me grow. No? And someone on my podcast said this the other day, I think it was Sean Pascal, he said, accept the challenges, because the challenges help you to grow. And that really resonated with me, because that's where I'm coming from. So in this world, the world is not meant to, we're not here to have a perfect life. I do believe from a spiritual perspective, we are contracted to come in and live this life. And we have choices in terms of what we want to manifest and what our soul wants to experience. And sometimes our soul will experience something ugly. But if you look back at the ugliness that you've experienced, you can turn that ugliness into something else by really taking it apart and saying, actually, for example, if it's an abusive relationship, you might say, I've grown from that relationship because now I see things in a different way. So you can grow, you can do the opposite. I'm aware of that. But from my experience, those experiences, I'm not saying I want to have them, I'm not saying bring them on, don't bring them on, no. I'm just saying, if I look back, that's where my growth has been. And right now I'm saying, I want that confrontation. If there's something, have that confrontation with me. You don't have to shout at me, but speak your truth. Because when people speak their truth to you, especially in a relationship or in the workplace, that's where growth happens. You know, it's like if you have an argument with your partner, it can go one way or the other. But sometimes after the argument, you start to see change. Do you have that experience? Like, you know, you might have had a
100%. And I love how
yeah.
you're coming at that. Brilliant. So, Pat, we're going to start to look to wrap up now, Tanya. And I
Yeah.
never like doing that with us. But I'm conscious for the listeners. So give us a little bit of a lowdown as we start to wrap up. So the Communications Hub, what is it and how can people potentially get involved?
I didn't answer that question. I just realised you threw something at me. I didn't answer it. Sorry. So
no, you're fine.
I just went off. I'm sorry. So yeah, Communication Hub basically is everything that I stand for. It is a space where owners and leaders and CEOs, entrepreneurs, I would say people coming from a conscious leadership space, because I'm a very conscious woman in terms of the way that I work and explore things. So it's not going to be strategy. It's not going to be serious structure. It's going to be structure, but not structure in a corporate way, because I'm not corporate. I'm very creative. So what Communication Hub is about is bringing these people together from a networking perspective, but to talk about the problems, not the successes. And the reason I want them to talk about the problems is because it's a space to get the help, to help people through some of the things that they're experiencing in their work right now. Because during the pandemic, my business included, there's been a lot of change. Yeah. There's been a lot of us have had to pivot. There's been a lot of us that have lost money. There's a lot of us that's grieving part of our businesses, and that's me included. And I have had to learn to pivot. And if it wasn't for some of the people that have come up and shown up in my world, then I would not be still surviving right now. And that is because I have been vulnerable enough to say, hey, I'm going through this. And I don't want people to come with these major sales pitches and have all the answers. No, it's about working through those answers, working through those questions, to see what that person needs. Because it's not always what's on the tin in terms of what that person needs. Sometimes it may not be that they need something that is, professional from a business perspective. Sometimes it could be that there's a limiting belief in there, and that needs to be addressed. So we basically will look at all those different options through that space. We'll talk through things. Once a month, I will have a speaker. So that basically the Communication Hub is once a week, but only once a month, I will have a speaker come in with a certain, like it could be a marketing person, or it could be a communications person, whatever, it could be a psychotherapist. But it's a space just so we can talk through all that stuff and solve problems. It's a place of solving problems, rather than, hey, I'm Tanya Communication Doctor and I've got a really successful business and my business is all about communication, helping people to release their throat chakras. Hey, come and buy me. No. It's about the opposite. It's about, hey, I'm Tanya Communication Doctor. I've set up this Communication Hub because I want to help others, because I've had my own struggles. That's what it's about.
Beautiful. So it really sounds like a wonderfully brave and safe space, but also a community of people that hopefully over time will be able to support one another as well as part of the Communication Hub, which sounds brilliant, because that's what we've been missing. And I think we've now got this opportunity, haven't we, is that even 12 months ago, to that offer that you now have, that very heart-led offer, Tanya, is a global offer.
Yeah.
And it's a global offer now, whereas even 12, 18 months ago, it may not have been as obvious to be a global offer, but now the technology works. So
that's it. Let's go. We're here.
Love it.
We've arrived.
Love it. So cool. I'm really excited to, I can't imagine where you're going to be in the next 18 months. And I look forward to watching your journey, Tanya. I appreciate you as a friend and a peer. And I just wish you luck with the Communication Hub. And I would love you to leave our listeners today. How can they find you? What's the best way to connect with you, to follow up and learn more about you, even more about you?
Okay, well, right now, Eventbrite, go on to Eventbrite, put in Communication Hub and purchase your ticket. That's the first thing. And if you want to find me, it's just communicationdoctor.co.uk. There's also, I've got loads of stuff online, if there's podcasts, real stories, if you want to learn a little bit more about my work. I've also started a new YouTube channel with regards to meditation. I've done it on purpose because I want to help people to escape as well and to connect. So the meditation channel is called Conscious Connection. So yeah, there you are. There you are. I'm all over the place. Yeah.
Brilliant. And I strongly recommend, I listened to one of Tanya's meditations the past weekend, and it's really beautiful. Really, really is beautiful. So yeah, I hope you reach out, connect with Tanya, awesome human being. And Tanya, again, appreciate your friendship and all you're trying to bring to the world. So have a great day. Take care.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Cheers.
Hey.